Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to Post Cologne. Today I'm going to give you 10 amazing hidden gem fragrances for the fall. So let's jump into it. All right, so today we are talking hidden gem fragrances. Fragrances that, in my personal opinion, I think deserve a lot more attention because they are fantastic smelling fragrances, especially for that fall season. Got a nice mix for you, different scent profiles. I got some Cologne house ones, I got some indie house ones. Nice variety, something for everybody in this list. Links can be down in the description if you decide you want to check any of these out. Also have some coupon codes that save yourself a few bucks off a variety of different discounters if you decide you want to shop with them. So let's quit screwing around. Let's get into it. All right, kicking things off, going to the house of Ahmed Al Maghribi, and it's Ahmed Al Maghribi's Soft. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Safe, Soft, one of those two. Definitely a kind of hidden gem within the Ahmed Al Maghribi series. They have a lot of really good fragrances, but no one seems to be talking about this one, and they should, because this is just a fantastic fall fragrance. Nice sharp cedar that's in here. It's got some cardamom, some cinnamon, adding some spice to it, some juniper berry. This kind of like almost soapy sandalwood that works in there, some nice fresh spicy aspects to it, and a little kiss of some flirty vanilla. Really gentlemanly, rich, sophisticated sort of DNA going on to it. Just has this really nice kind of clean, almost barbershop sort of appeal to it, but it's got this nice kind of warm, spicy aspect to it. And like I said, there's this nice kind of almost like fresh, soapy greenness that goes on to this fragrance, and it has this vanilla that just kind of softens the edges, adds a little bit of a flirty sweetness to it, and the juniper berries in here just playing nicely with those greens. Overall, just kind of like a distinguished, classy style of fragrance, but with that kind of like almost mischievously flirty side to it. A unique style of fragrance. Not everyone's going to enjoy this one. It's not necessarily a dumb reach one, and I do find this to be a little bit on the mature side, but I really enjoy the scent profile in it. So I think it's a nice balance of that fresh cleanness with those warm spices and that little poke of some sweet that comes through. Really well done fragrance, and the performance on this is pretty good. I get about 7-8 hours off my skin, and it does project off pretty good for the first hour and a half before it does settle back in. You can push that out by getting some on your clothing. So overall, I think this is a definite hidden gem within the Ahmed Al Maghribi series and worth checking out. That's Ahmed Al Maghribi's Soft. All right, next up, going to the house of Atralia, and it's Atralia's Amazonas Avalanche. Now, I think Atralia in and of itself is kind of a hidden gem right now. They're really kind of breaking onto the scene right now, and they have some fantastic fragrances, and this Avalanche is definitely a hidden gem within that series. Really nice kind of Dior Homme intense style of DNA to it. Has that powdery iris that's in there, has this nice cacao that's there, pressurized atomizer. Some nice sage, there's this nice little kiss of some leather, but it's really about that sweet, powdery, floral style of iris that comes through, and this little bit of this bittersweet cacao that mixes in with it, and this nice kind of woody base that forms, but it just has that sensual, elegant, gentlemanly sort of vibe that you do get from that Dior Homme Intense, with just a little bit of a twist with that little hint of that cacao that comes through with this one. It's just an absolutely beautiful, gentle, sexy style of fragrance that I am just a huge fan of. Performance on this is pretty good. I get about 7 hours off my skin. You can push that out by getting it on your clothing, and it does project off pretty good for that first hour and a half before it does settle back in. So like I said, Atralia, they're coming onto the scene. They have some really good fragrances coming out, and I think this one is definitely a hidden gem that's worth checking out. That's Atralia's Amazonas Avalanche. All right, next up, going to the house of Lattafa, and it's Lattafa's Al Soft. Now, this is absolutely a hidden gem within the Lattafa line. I don't think I've ever really heard anyone talk about this one, and they should, because it smells fantastic, and it's super cheap. It's hard to find, but it is available on FragranceNet at the time of filming this, and it was like $15 for this, which is, I might get a backup bottle, because this is an absolutely fantastic kind of twist of the Viktor & Rolf's Spice Bomb Extreme. Absolutely love this one. Has this LME violet pink pepper in the opening, so you get a little bit of a floral sweetness, but it's really about these spices, that pink pepper, spices in the mid, little touch of some myrrh. It just has that kind of spice bomb style of DNA when it comes to those spices. Has this nice tonka that comes through, so it adds this kind of creamy vanillic accord that has like a little bit of a woody profile to it. There are some earthy tones in this as well, but it really kind of sits as more of a foundation. It's really about that spice profile, that tonka that comes through, some more of those resinous sweetness from some LME and some myrrh that works its way in. Just has a nice balance of that spice, some sweetness, kind of a dark, rich deepness to it as well, and just smells absolutely fantastic. A compliment monster. The girl I'm dating right now, I wore this the other day, and she just absolutely loved this one. So fantastic fragrance, compliment beast, and really slept on in terms of nobody talking about this one. Performance on this is actually really good as well. So you get about 8 hours worth of longevity off your skin. You definitely push that out, get some on your clothing, and it does project off really nice for the first hour and a half, 2 hours before it does settle back in. So slept on Lattafa, definitely worth checking out. If you're into that kind of Viktor and Rolf Spice Bomb extreme style of DNA, again, it's more of a twist than anything, but I think you're gonna enjoy this one. That's Lattafa's Soft. All right, next up, going to the house of Afnan with Afnan's Zemea Sukraf Black. Now, this is a really nice clone of the Sauvage Elixir and has a little bit of a twist going on to it, but you're really getting that DNA from this one, and it's absolutely really well done. Has that pepper in the top, a little bit of some aromatics that goes on, and you get a really strong licorice that comes through. A little bit of lavender as well, just to kind of give it like a little bit of a lift. It kind of accentuates that fresh, spicy black licorice style of note that's in the base, working in with those peppers. But I am not a huge fan of black licorice, and the opening on this is very strong in that, but it does settle back in and it does kind of settle down, and it really becomes more about this coffee note that's in there, some nice aromatics, that spice with that licorice, and it has this really nice soft vanilla that works in kind of towards the mid and the dry down. That really kind of smooths this out, adds like an additional sweetness that's a little bit different from the Sauvage Elixir, but it still maintains that kind of backbone, that DNA of it. That's definitely going to give you that same sort of kind of mass appeal, crowd pleasing, compliment beast style of scent DNA, but just with a little twist going on to it, and it smells absolutely fantastic. And performance on this is really good. I get great projection for the first 2 hours or so before it does settle back in, and this clocks beyond the 8 hour mark. I'm getting 8+ hours off my skin, get some on my clothing, and it will last into the next day. So it's not quite a beast mode fragrance in my opinion, but it gets you pretty close. It performs very well, and if you're into that Sauvage Elixir style of DNA, you definitely want to check this one out. That's Afnan's Zemea Sukraf Black. All right, next up, we're going to an indie house, and it's Christopher Lee's Red Fall. Now, I was sent this fragrance by Christopher Lee. He wanted me to check out some of his fragrances, and this was love at first sniff when I had this one. It's just absolutely beautiful tobacco fragrance. Has some nice spice to it. It has this nice sweet accord, really nice rich tobacco that goes on. Where's the freaking atomizer? There it is. Nice incense that works in there, and this little kiss of some oud that's in there, so it adds this nice kind of dark richness to that tobacco accord, some smokiness that goes on, but there's a nice mix of some sweet and spice as well, pressurized atomizer, and the oil quality on this is absolutely fantastic, like a shimmery skin when you wear this one. And just a beautiful kind of sweet pipe tobacco with that smokiness, that incense in there, that kind of sweet woody oud that works its way in there. Just a kiss. It's not like an oudy fragrance, but just enough to give it that kind of depth, that character to it, and it just smells absolutely fantastic. Really well blended, nice balance of those sweet accords, those spices, that kind of dark, earthy, rich tobacco, and just love it first sniff for me. Really enjoy this fragrance, and the performance on this is really good. First hour and a half to 2 hours worth of projection, well beyond an arm's length before it does settle back in, and I'm getting like 8 to 10 hours off my skin, and this lasts a long time on the clothing if you get some on there. So absolutely beautiful hidden gem of a fragrance, and definitely worth checking out. That's Christopher Lee's Red Fall. All right, next up, going back to the house of Ahmed Al Maghribi, and it's Ahmed Al Maghribi's Hirfa. Now, this fragrance, I think this was the very first introduction to the Ahmed Al Maghribi series, and it was a good first impression because I really enjoy this fragrance. It just has this nice kind of fresh, spicy woods, these aromatics, little touches, some sweetness that's going on to it, and just kind of like a rich, gentlemanly, classy sort of vibe, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Pressurized atomizer as well. Has this nice pine note in the opening, so it got this like fresh, crisp, spicy, woody style of opening that mixes in really nice with this kind of sweet lime accord. So it has this like sweet citrus that's going on that has a little bit of a zip to it. This green apple that just has this like crisp, like photorealistic style of green apple that's mixing in, and it just blends together with that really nice sharp piney aspect to it, just giving this, like I said, a fresh, clean, lively, but sort of like earthy, woody profile that goes on to it. Just absolutely a beautiful scent profile on this. A little bit of aromatics in there, some lavender to add to that cleanness. And as you get towards the dry down, you get this nice smooth sandalwood that works its way in there. Works really nice with that fresh, spicy aspect to it. And a little bit of musk there just to kind of tie everything together. A little bit of sweet pop in there, but a very kind of nice earthy dry down with that fresh, spicy aspect. Beautiful fragrance, absolutely worth checking out. And the performance on this is pretty good. I get about an hour and a half worth of projection off this, well beyond an arm's length before it does settle back in. And I'm clocking between 6 and 8 hours off my skin before it really fades into a skin scent, but it does linger once it's become a little bit closer to the skin, but it does last a few hours beyond that. So overall performance is pretty good, but the scent profile is absolutely amazing. Definitely a hidden gem and definitely worth checking out. That's Ahmed Al Maghribi's Herfa. All right, next up, going to the house of Tumi, and it's Tumi's Continuum. Now, this might be the first time I've talked about a Tumi fragrance on this channel. I've tried a few of them, but Continuum is the one I just reach for over and over again because it's a really nice fragrance that has like a great transition from the opening to the dry down. Starts off kind of bright, has this kind of green freshness to it. You get a little bit of tobacco that comes through. Nice atomizer on this. A little bit of a smokiness, this nice orris root in there that adds this kind of sweet florally powdery texture to it, but it has this kind of like the spiced vanilla Coke sort of vibe going on to it. It has a bit of an effervescent to it, if you will. But as you get towards the dry down, more of that tobacco comes through. You get this really nice kind of sweet woody oud that kind of pokes its way in there and adding a nice kind of deep, rich, dark foundation for this nice tobacco to sit on, but it still maintains some kind of green freshness into it, has a little bit of a sweetness that works its way in there, and through, it just has a really kind of like bold yet classy, gentlemanly sort of vibe that's got a fun, flirty side to it as well. And it's just a really enjoyable fragrance. Really well put together, very well blended, and the quality is absolutely great on this one. And I just really enjoy this fragrance, and not enough people really talk about this one. Performance on this is pretty good. First hour and a half projection is about an arm's length, a little bit longer before it does settle back in, and I'm getting between 6 and 7 hours worth of longevity off my skin. You can push that out a little bit more when you get some on your clothing. So not a monster performer, but it makes up for it in the scent profile, just how fantastic this is. I think this is a bit of a slept-on fragrance, and it might be worth checking out. That's Tumi's Continuum. All right, next up, going to the house of Paris Corner, and it's Paris Corner's Vibrant Sensual Saffron. Now, this fragrance is in the same line as some of the other Paris Corner fragrances as a burrito clone. This is the black saffron style of DNA to this one. And it's just really nice, kind of saffron, leather, raspberry style of fragrance. Very similar to the Tom Ford Tuscan leather as well. Has a lot of overlaps with that one, but just kind of a beautiful, luxurious style of leather that comes through with a really nice kind of sweet tart style of raspberry. Little bit of some aromatics, some fresh touches with the juniper berry that's in the opening. You get a little kiss of some citrus with that grapefruit in the opening as well, but really this fragrance is all about that sweet style of like smooth, sexy leather mixing with that raspberry. You get a little bit of woods that kind of come in towards the dry down, but like I've said 3 times now, it's just the raspberry leather accord that's in this one that is absolutely beautiful. Just a beautiful balance of kind of the sweetness, a little bit of tartness comes through. There's some earthiness as well, and it's just a really classy, gentlemanly sort of vibe, but again, has this kind of this sexy, flirty side to it with that sweet tart raspberry that comes through. Beautiful scent profile on this one, and no one really talks about this one. I think this is a hidden gem within the Paris Corner line, and it definitely deserves more attention. And the performance on this is pretty good. First hour and a half, 2 hours, this projects off really well before it does settle back in. And I'm clocking 8+ hours off my skin before it does settle into a skin scent, and it does kind of linger as a skin scent well beyond that 8-hour mark, and this really sticks to clothing as well. So the performance on this is fantastic. The scent accord on this is fantastic, and I definitely think it's worth checking out. That's Paris Corner's Vibrant Sensual Saffron. All right, next up, going back to the house of Lattafa, and it's Lattafa's Cayed Intense. Now, this fragrance is the newer release from the Cayed flankers, and it is starting to get talked about a little bit more here, but I still think it's kind of slept on. It's a bit of a hidden gem within Lattafa because this is a fantastic interpretation of the Givenchy Gentleman Reserve Privé. Did I say that right? Yes, I did. Fantastic scent DNA on this one. Has this honeys, this tobacco, nice mix of some spices, some like ambery vanilla. Little hint of some cacao, but it's really about this kind of like this white honey that kind of comes through, adding this nice powdery sweet texture, this rich earthy tobacco that's in there, this cacao note and some of the vanilla mixed together, giving it a bit of a sweet profile, but it remains kind of like a nice dry, sweet, almost dusty style of fragrance that just has a really kind of classy, gentlemanly vibe, but has that kind of sweet mystique to it at the same point. It's just a nice balance of some spices, some nice vanilla amberiness, that tobacco that comes through, and a nice rich earthiness to it as well, but it has that dry texture as well. Just an overall beautiful scent accord on this. Performance on this is moderate. I get about an hour and a half worth of projection, and it doesn't blast out too far, but I do find the longevity is much better. I get about 8 hours off my skin, and it does last a little bit longer on the clothing. So not a monster projector, but it does kind of run the course of a full day, and I do enjoy that about this. But the scent profile on this is absolutely fantastic, and within the Lattafa line, I definitely think this is being slept on and definitely worth checking out. That's Lattafa's Kayed Intense. All right, last but certainly not least, going back to the house of Atralia with Atralia's Absolute Noir. Now, this fragrance in the Atralia line, I think this one is my current favorite at the moment, because this is just an absolutely amazing kind of twist on that Creed Aventus Absolute DNA. Really, really like how this one comes through. It's just a nice citrus earthiness that comes through, has this nice watermelon note in it. Just a great citrus opening in this one. You get some grapefruit that comes through, some bergamot, you get this pink pepper that adds this kind of fresh spicy sweetness to it as well. A little bit of a woody ambroxan that comes through, this moss, this kind of oak mossy sort of earthiness that's in there as well. And this watermelon note that just kind of adds this fruity sweetness to it, and almost kind of like a lightness to it, a wateriness to it as well. Just makes this just an absolutely beautiful mix of those earthy accords, those citruses, that spice, that sweetness, and it just all blends together into a nice twist on that Aventus Absolute DNA. And I am just a huge fan of this. Just as you get towards the dry down, it gets a little bit darker and deeper, like you'd get with those other fragrances, like including Armaf's Club de Nuit Pursuit 1. Little less dark because of that watermelon note that's in there. It just kind of keeps a little bit more of a lightness, a little bit more of a kind of a playfulness to it, if you will, but it still gets that kind of earthy deepness to it. And I just think it's a really well put together fragrance, and the performance on this is fantastic. Hour and a half, 2 hours, this does push off really, really well before it does settle back in, and I'm getting 8+ hours of longevity off my skin. Definitely lasts into the next day if you get it on your clothing. So within the Atralia line, this is absolutely probably the best in my opinion, but that's a fairly subjective observation. But I really like this fragrance. I think it's really well put together. The quality is definitely there, and I definitely think it's worth checking out. That's Atralia's Absolute Noir. All right, so there you have it. That's 10 amazing hidden gem fragrances for the fall that I think you should know about. But I want to hear from you guys. What are some of your hidden gem fragrances for the fall time that we should all know about? Comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. I love getting your different recommendations, your hidden gems, different taste and scent profiles. Appreciate you. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.